Hi, everyone. This is Kerry Cassidy from Project Camelot, and I'm very hopeful that this broadcast is working. So I'm going to check with the chat in just a moment. But first, I'm going to attempt to run like my logo type thing. So hold on. Okay, that didn't work.
Okay.
Okay.
I can still hear you fine.
We're here with Sean David Morton, and let me put his the identifying poster on here for just a minute while I check with the chat to see that we've got good audio. Right. Okay. So you can see and hear us. Excellent. Okay. Very good. So tonight we're going to be talking about the Isomer protocol, and this is Sands of Time 3, the long-awaited third book in the trilogy. And let me see. Okay, Sean David Morton.
Hello. That's me.
Excellent. And Sean is a renowned psychic, intuitive, a producer, a TV producer, a investigator, a talk show host, a very well-known radio talk show host, and what else? Director and filmmaker, and really multi-talented remote viewer and psychic extraordinaire. Welcome, Sean David Morton, to the show, and lovely to have you here.
Thank you, Lady Kerry Cassidy, the lowest lane of the internet. Thank you so much.
And we have Sean on Skype, so the logistics are a little bit dicey, but it worked for me the other night, so I'm hoping that we're not going to have any issues with that. And I'm just trying to make his picture a little more perfect. And there we go. Okay, so at this moment, we're going to be talking about your beautiful new book.
Thank you.
And I am more than halfway through it. It's a long read. It's over 400 pages.
It's not. It's 367.
Oh, well, the
really
version,
big,
okay, the first version you gave me was a PDF, and it was over 400. So whatever it is. Yeah, hold it up. Hold it up. Hold it up. Yeah.
That's it. Isn't it pretty?
Yeah, it's excellent. Excellent.
And it's not a long read. It's a fascinating, exciting read. Don't give me.
No, all I said was I said it was a lot of pages, but it's excellent. And
it's the size of a regular book. See, regular book size. It's not Harry Potter, the Death Hollow Prince, or whatever it is. It's
okay.
There it is. The Isomer protocol, right there. There we go. So.
All right. Thank you so much, Sean.
Even has a top secret classified Viper right there. You know, taken from the roof at Area 51, smuggled out right on the cover. So there you go. Thank you so much. Thanks for reading it. Thanks for being excited about it. Just thanks for being you. Thank you so much.
Okay. And thank you for being you, Sean David Morton. So, Sean, let's pretend, I know that you're so well known that this is hard to believe, but let's just pretend that no one else knows who you are, and let's give an introduction for yourself. Talk about kind of what you've been doing the last few years, and if there's any updates on the recent lawsuit or whatever you want to call that you want to share with people, do that.
Okay, well, it's gosh, okay. For the last 3 years, actually, and actually thanks to you, Kerry, you're the one that actually got me involved with the first station that you and I were on, and then for the last 3 years, I've been the #1 talk show host on revolutionradio.co, also known as freedomslips.com, and been one of the only talk show hosts to actually break the top 5 in TalkStream Live, which is the rating system. So we have out of 10,000 internet stations, mostly music and whatever else, Strange Universe Radio has been ranked in the top 10 now for about the last couple of years. So been doing the radio show, #1. #2, been writing books. How I sort of came to national fame originally was in earthquake prediction. Way back in the day, I predicted and published predictions about the San Francisco earthquake. I even took people up to Mount Shasta on October 1st, 17 days before the quake hit, to see if we could divert the energy and do something with it, which then led to, once again, my television film production. 1990, we did a documentary called UFO Contactees, 600 hours of footage interviews with contactees, abductees, scientists, researchers. Somebody had a dog barked at a UFO. We went out and talked to them. So we spent about 4 months traveling all over Europe, Italy, Spain, Switzerland, England. We were in the fields when the crop circles were being made back in 1990. This was after actually being part of a scientific expedition in 1989 that ultrasounded the Dulce Archuleta Mesa that physically proved that there was a top secret base there that had a nuclear pile that was connected to a series of jet tubes. So all this supposedly UFO fantasy and all this conspiracy stuff, we actually went out and physically proved it using scientific techniques that were groundbreaking and pioneering. 1990, we did the UFO Contactees documentary. Also started UFO Library magazine, where I was a contributing editor for that. 91, went out to Area 51, got buzzed by a UFO, put it on the front page of the LA Times for the first time, making it an international story, led tours of people to Area 51. Was then a producer on the groundbreaking Fox program Sightings. Linda Moulton Howe was our executive producer, and I produced sections of the Area 51 piece for them. Then went on to work on television shows like Mysteries, Magic, and Miracles, Paranormal Borderline. I was a roving reporter and a freelance reporter for Hard Copy for about 3 years or so. I've broken stories on. I actually found the hilltop that looked down on the base at Area 51. Broken stories, first stories ever done at the Chupacabra. I was tagged by the president of UPN at that time to actually start a TV show called Strange Universe. Strange Universe Tonight was what it was called, and it was just Strange Universe, which was a strip show, as we call it, 4 days a week of investigating the paranormal and strange whatever. Ran for about 3 years or so. Then I worked on various pieces of Unsolved Mysteries. I was at the core of the beginning of both the Alien Autopsy and the Alien Interview. I was the #1 guest on Coast to Coast AM with Art Bell back when that show was good. Our ratings were, we had 24.6 million people tuning into my programs, and I was on about every month. So that program was #1 worldwide. So it goes on and on and on. The thing with the Isomer protocol that I want to talk about, since I'm here to talk about this book, I've done 3 books now, and so let me just explain. If that's my introduction as a television host, as a radio personality, as an investigator, somebody who's always been trying to push the truth, and basically push the envelope on human knowledge. So after I started getting involved with Area 51 and started taking people out there, a very mysterious man, I'll just call him Ted Humphrey, that's not his real name, but Dr. Ted Humphrey, after hearing a lot of my radio shows, began to call me. And I actually met him at a UFO conference way back in the day in Phoenix, I think it was. And I didn't really know who he was, but he just had a lot of information and seemed to want to impart me with that information. And so over the years, he began to call me and tell me about, well, you might want to look into this and that, which then translated to my getting up on this, in front of 24.6 million people and talking about everything from Area 51 to the Alien Interview to a lot of inside information he was giving me. So the last I heard from him was Barack Obama's inauguration in 2009. It was kind of a funny story because I had predicted that Barack Obama was going to screw up the oath of office because Obama wasn't a citizen and he couldn't actually take the oath as it was written in the Constitution. And so I wrote this whole article about watch what's going to happen. The big joke is I'll bet you any amount of money that Obama can't say the oath when he gets up there. And lo and behold, John Roberts, who's a sheep in wolf's clothing, he screwed up the oath, and they claim Obama took it in private the next day. But this man called me from the dais, if you will, from the Capitol steps, laughing his ass off, saying, "I can't believe that you predicted this, and I owe you $100." Well, he paid me the $100, but that was kind of the last I heard from him until I got called into some very scary lawyers' offices in Century City, who then gave me these journals of this man saying that he had moved on. Never said he died, ever. They said he moved on, and he wants you to have these. Well, they were a set of leather-bound books, literally with like a leather belt around them, like you would carry them to school or something. And those journals then became the basis of these books. This is volume 1 of Sands of Time. This is volume 2 here, and then of course you have volume 3, the latest book called The Isomer Protocol. Now, the great thing about these is that we've got 5-star ratings on Amazon from, oh my goodness, just hundreds and hundreds of people, and a New York Times bestseller sells about 40,000 copies if you break it down and boil it down. And already the Sands of Time series is up there about It's at least 30,000 or so, just from this whole community, and the response to it has been fantastic, because the first 2 books, people have said that it's a Rosetta Stone, that it is anybody out there that wants the whole story, anybody out there that you have, it's like a friend that wants to get into conspiracy, that wants to get into UFOs, wants to get into Area 51, then these books are the books you need, because they really do start at the beginning of the program with Dr. Ted Humphrey trying to figure out what happens to his dad, who you realize has actually used a time device to actually move himself in time. But he goes through all these programs. We start at Montauk, and then he goes to Area 51, and then he goes to the Dulce Mesa, and it has an unraveling of the story that connects all the different viscera, that connects all the different kind of hanging pieces of all the things that you and I have devoted ourselves to. I mean, there's things in there about how they fought the Dulce War. There's things in there about why they moved the saucers from Wright-Patterson Air Force Base and Hangar 18 to Area 51. There's things about their development of back engineering of the saucers. You have political figures like Jimmy Carter and Ronald Reagan and Bill Clinton sort of moving in and out of the black world of this gang called the Group that Dr. Ted Humphrey becomes the original boss of. And Isomer Protocol then happens about 10 years after the events of book 1 and 2, where Ted Humphrey's a little bit older, but finally in this book, we finally figure out how and why, and I give you the entire theory as to how it works of basically time travel. And it's not a trilogy, because the next book is coming. There's going to be book 4 and book 5, and if we get our way, these are being turned into multi-million-dollar films, and they want a TV series as well that's also based on German technology and advances from about 1915 until about 1945. Go ahead.
Okay, well, great, Sean. Tour de force as usual. Well, it's great to have this new book in hand, and I'm very happy that people are taking good notice of it. You can also go to my website at projectcamelotportal.com, and if you click on the ad for tonight's show, you'll actually find those books where you can click on them and buy them.
Thank you.
And that clicks over to Amazon, and so it helps Camelot. I think we get maybe 10 cents a book or something crazy.
You get a percentage, and also let me tell you this, that if you order the Kindle version of the book, this is amazing. The Kindle version has now been translated into 12 languages. So the book is out there, and it's in Italian, it's in French, it's even in Canadian. I don't know how they did that, but it's actually in Canadian as well. So
excellent. Canadian. Yeah, that's an interesting language. Okay.
So all your world, I'm just saying, you have an audience, Kerry, that's worldwide. When you and I toured Europe, and we went to Antwerp.
That's right. And people were looking for you, Sean, when I was in Europe this time. I invited you, but you were not able to leave the country at the time.
No, that's like, okay. All right.
Yeah.
I can leave the country fine. I'm going to Canada next week. It's not a problem.
Okay, it's a new thing that you can leave. Okay, well, during the time,
like, this is not, for what you're talking about. Look, this whole thing is going to be dismissed. It was a show thing in the first place, but again, I mean, I can explain the logistics of it, but they have no personal jurisdiction, no subject matter jurisdiction. It's a joke. It's a farce. The whole thing was to stop me. The whole thing was about these books and and they wanted to get their hands on the journals and the manuals. And we're talking about them trying to do something over paperwork I filed with them 7 years ago. This happened 7 years ago. And it's absurd. I know. By the way, the whole point of this is that I am not a 14th Amendment disenfranchised Negro slave in 1866. I've declared my status to be outside of all of this various jurisdiction, and that's how this is eventually going to come down, and that's what's going to dismiss this whole nonsense. Please remember, look, it's hard being Han Solo. It's hard fighting the Empire. And
it's excellent that you've done what you've done, and I'm very proud of you, Sean, and I think everyone else who knows you is also proud of you. I just want to say that there is an interesting sort of front piece to this book that actually explains how you were viewed by this particular whistleblower. In essence, he's a whistleblower, and he's the inspiration for all your books. So,
well, they're his journals. What I've done is I've taken his personal experience and I've put it into kind of an action adventure format. And if you folks want to just read it as science fiction, then that's all good for me, because it keeps them from putting a bullet in my head. Obviously, they don't think I've had generals tell me I'm too funny to kill. I actually thought of a website called Too Funny to Kill, but you know, they're trying to disgrace and discredit me other ways. And look, I just want to tell you that KERRY knows this. Everybody knows this. You know, I'm a good guy, and we're all the good guys. We're all trying to do the right thing for everybody, and it's all about making people free. And they don't like that. They don't like anybody that's free.
Right.
And they will pound you down because to a hammer, everything looks like a nail.
Yeah, and you know that in Malibu, in a park at Cross Creek, there are hammers. That's what they put in the children's park. They put these sculptures of hammers.
Oh yeah, I saw that.
Because they want to teach those little children how to be the hammer, not the nail. That's what it's all about. Yeah. And this is subliminal programming on children in Malibu. And so be warned, Malibu parents.
Well, the crossed hammers were the symbol for Pink, the dictator, in Pink Floyd's The Wall, wasn't it? Isn't that what it's symbolizing?
I'm sure. But it also says, I just want to read this thing, Sean, that's in your book. It says, will he be listened to? Maybe. Will he be savagely attacked, smeared, arrested by some federal alphabet agency on some trumped up charge, or killed? Most definitely. So that's a quote from your book. Yeah. I just, you know, the book is a lot of fun. It's also fascinating. And I'm really, you know, I'm in the part where just after they went and on this great ride in this amazing Viper craft.
Oh, yeah.
And I have questions for you about, you know, the content in this book. So
sure.
What I want to do is, you know, ask you some questions, but I also want you to, if you want, if there's any like overview, like there's a summation or a short, you know, like log line of the book. What do you want to put that out?
Yeah, sure. Again, book 1 and book 2 were very much about the life of Ted Humphrey and him. His father disappears after developing time technology, basically, and he then goes to USC. He graduates USC, goes to Caltech, gets his PhD, gets pulled into the Montauk Project, gets something called the Beast at Montauk to work. Anyway, it's his life going all the way through that to find out what happened to his father. Now, Isomer Protocol takes place approximately about 8 years later after the end of book 2. And what it's primarily about is that obviously Ted Humphrey is older now. They're bringing another man in, a British scientist who had worked on the time travel stuff for a long time, to make him the new head of the group. There is they salvage. This is the group now with our various technologies. We salvage an Altarian ship on Mars. And one of the things that we bring back from the ship was this weird sphere. And when they tried to open the sphere in Kansas, the thing explodes and destroys the entire facility.
Okay, can you stop right there? Because I want to know, is this actually in his notes?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
It's all in the book. And so as the journals continue, the only thing where I shifted things was in book 3, I decided to make it in third person, because in the third person, I could then bring in a lot of other information that was supporting his story, like the information about the, when they crack this thing open, it then sends the Altarians on their way to Earth to basically now figure out how far it is that we've actually advanced. And so there's a lot of information in there about what the Germans were doing with time travel, and a whole thing about some backstory about the main sort of German Nazi that's in the book. And get down.
Kamler.
Get down.
Kamler.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Hans Kahn. I've got a cat. Timber Tahoe. I'm sorry, I've got a cat running around. Okay, just be a good boy. Sit there. So Tahoe's out here, so he's just running everything around everything. So the point of it is that it goes back to a lot of the true history about what happened in the very interesting period of time around 1953 with a number of meetings that Dwight Eisenhower had with extraterrestrial races. And I think there's been a lot of disinformation in regards to his meetings with as you know them as the tall whites, or as they later became known as the Etherians. And this had to do with the original February meeting of Eisenhower with, they didn't say who they were, but they just called them the Etherians, because they had these devices on their belt that could actually kind of phase them in and out. It could make them invisible, in essence. And do you want to talk about that meeting, or?
Well, I can say that, you know, Charles Hall's tall whites are one group, and they may be indeed the Etherians, but there is a lot of disinfo about them out there, which I don't appreciate. I do want to say that people also get confused because they think tall whites and Nordics are the same thing, and
Yes.
they're not.
No.
So go ahead.
Well, it just had to do with, I think, the disinformation that's involved, and I think we've talked about this on the other program. The disinformation that's involved is that they called the meeting with Eisenhower. They showed up and said, take us to your leader. We want him here right now. This was not a friendly meeting of these people. Eisenhower got, an archbishop from Los Angeles. He got Gerald Blight. He got Archbishop McIntyre, all these people to come out there. This was a meeting that was demanded by these ETs, and they didn't mess around. I mean, they shot down a couple of planes over Muroc, which is now Edwards Air Force Base. This was not something friendly. The reason that they decided to meet with Eisenhower was because the National Security Agency, the NSA, using technology primarily that we got from the Germans and or maybe from another extraterrestrial group, but they landed on the moon in January of 1953. And this is what triggered this meeting. And what triggered the meeting was, look, you're not ready to go out into the universe. They basically consider us a disease. That we're greedy, that we're vile, that we're hateful, that we're murderous. Even our language is considered a mental virus by them. And they were like, look, you're staying on this planet. We're not letting you go anywhere. And the bottom line here is that, if you give up your nuclear weapons, maybe we'll help you. And that was part of the conversation. But the rest of it had to do with basically making sure that mankind stayed isolated to this planet as what they consider to be, for lack of a better term, a fallen world, if you will. They also then warned them about, well, there's another group out there as well. And this was the gray Zeta Reticulans they were talking about. And, they're probably going to approach you. And that happened in November of 1953. And when the Greys showed up, they were basically like, well, we don't care where you go or what you do. We want sperm and eggs. Give us that stuff. We'll pick some people up, wipe their brains, put them back, and we'll give you technology. And then, and Eisenhower was like, yeah, sure, because Eisenhower was just stabbing everybody in the back, right, left, and center. So this whole thing very much became, as we progressed through this whole deal, the Isomer Protocol, which was signed in the right after the Dulce conflict, actually. After the Dulce conflict, when we mysteriously won, and nobody to this day really knows how we did it, but they showed up again saying, look, you're making treaties with the scum of the universe, so we thought you were bad, now we think you were worse. And the isolation memorandum, which was signed, was you're staying on this planet, and we're going to police you and make sure that you do stay on this planet. And that's what everything became about probably after Dulce. Now, we obviously didn't agree. We didn't live up to that agreement either. So, and we built our moon base in Cape, it kills us saying this, but at the North Pole of the moon, we have a major base that's under the control of the United States Space Command, which is called Cape Malabar Radio. And Malabar Radio has been there for at least since Apollo, I think. I mean, they were sending stuff up there to start creating Malabar Radio in the early 60s. And this was under Project Horizon with General Arthur Trudeau, who was telling Kennedy, by the way, look, we can have military bases on the moon by 1964, 1966, if you don't want to, you're going to mess around with this whole race to the moon and man on the moon, where the original plan was supposed to be to build space shuttles, then build the space station, and then from the space station, move on to the moon. Well, we just jumped that whole thing because of the super technology that we got. So anyway, so there's Cape Malabar Radio. And what then happens in the rest of the book, and why I think it's so exciting, is that we go toe-to-toe with the Altarians.
Okay, but don't tell people what happens.
Oh, okay. Well, the Altarians, the Altarians are in the book. I'm just telling you that it's finally in this book, the third book, we finally come of age. We finally tell these species out there that, look, we're grown-ups now. We don't need your help, and we're going to start moving out into the universe. And I definitely think that about 2004, 2006 or so, when this happened, created a major shift or a major change in what's going on in the secret space programs and technology. And
okay, well, wait. So you're saying this challenge that happened in the book, I thought it was happening way back when. You're saying it was in 2006?
About 2004. But the challenge that I'm talking about in 2004 was our finally just going toe-to-toe with them, because they were, well, I don't want to say.
So Humphreys was still operational in 2004?
Yeah, like I said, the last I heard of him was 2009, and then I heard from the lawyers later on that year that he had, quote, moved on. And for all I know, he's not dead. When I looked at all the material has to do, the entire point of this program, of what they called Zeitlaufer, was a time runner device. And it's interesting how this book then ties into, and I know it's kind of, I mean, I was fascinated by it for a while, but if you remember the John Titor material,
Yep.
where the only thing I thought was, well, it's an interesting story because I think when Titor jumped back, I think he started living along an alternate timeline. And he even said that the timeline would alter and he would have to jump back to before the altering timeline to get to it. But the fascinating part for that was Titor had a device that was built by General Electric that was used in a car. I think it was like he had to have something that was like a 1974 Pinto or something. And they put this device in a car, and there were actually plans on the website for this device. So the plans were remarkably similar to what they came up with for the Time Runner device. And
that's interesting. Well, I have special contacts with the John Titor story, and it is interesting. They themselves, as it happened, started going AWOL and crazy. So there is no doubt that there are some very some dark machinations associated with this time travel situation. And I do find it, let me say that I do find it interesting that this woman, Anne, her first name's Anne, who tracks our hero, so to speak, in the book. She's like the diabolical time traveler.
Anne Corbett, yes. Anne Corbett was the one with Dr. Simon Ratterman.
Can I just want to ask you, is she based on reality?
Yes, of course.
Yes.
It's all, and again, you're asking me if they're based on reality. I don't know. I mean, I took what I took out of his journal. So knowing who he was and what a big deal he was, then I don't think he would lie about it in the book.
No, it's fascinating,
But when book 4, because the outline for book 4 is even more interesting, because now at the end of this book, when you finally have a development of this technology, book 4 is the wild toad ride, because now we're talking about a person, bouncing through holes in time, if you will, to be able to alter the time stream, which is much more difficult than anybody thinks, because you have to find a way to alter mass consciousness in order to change anything in time. So, so that's just kind of the way it goes. But we'll see. I get to tearing apart book 4 and putting it all together. We're going to get this one out there to all the people and get it out in all the languages, and hopefully make a movie out of these or turn it into a TV series. So there we go. Okay.
Well, what happens is basically what I want to talk about is this Viper, and I want to know how much is based on reality. Again, you're talking about technology that is quite sophisticated. You describe the inside of the Viper. You describe how it accelerates, how it has 4 different, I think you call them drives, or ways of powering itself.
How it actually moves into a time-space trough as well. Also, the workings of, to give an idea, by that time, and let me just tell you the reality and where it all links into the book. We have one major, I don't know what you would call it. We have a Starfleet. That's the bottom line is that we have a Starfleet. There's even ads now for the U.S. Space Command that says, join the U.S. Space Command. It's just like serving on a ship. It's very interesting. That's on TV. That's on TV. And the newest facility is being built under, it's so much trouble for this. Enough trouble as it is. But the newest facility is under Kings Peak in the Uinta National Forest in Utah. So that's where they move almost everything from Area 51 to there. They also that's the headquarters of the U.S. Space Command. They moved most of the stuff from Strategic Air Command out of Omaha, which was the heartbeat of what they called the Nebraska Navy. And look, we have an entire Starfleet serving in space in this solar system that is every bit as amazing as it's basically the whole Star Trek universe really does exist. It's all out there. And Gary McKinnon, when he cracked the Navy database using Ukrainian software back in the day, McKinnon was the one that was kind of threatening to release this unless they laid off him. And eventually, the British government told the U.S. government to basically F off because they were trying to extradite him for discovering some stuff about our Starfleet. So here's what we have. We've got the 4 Vipers, or we had. There's more now, and of course, there's more technologies developed. But in 2004, we had the 4 major Vipers, which were the black wings. They were probably, everybody's heard of the TR-3B. These were, I think, TR-6s, And then you have another one that was developed in 2008, which is really awesome, which is what they call the TR8A, and that one is the one that you saw the famous video of in France. That is the big black triangle that's got the quantum drive in the center, and it's got a big kind of liquid center to it, and the quantum drive then bubbles it bursts out into a bubble, and then the whole bubble then takes up the whole ship, and then it just bends time space, and the ship disappears.
Okay, but Sean, I want to ask you, how do you know this? Is it written about in his journals, like explaining the technology in detail?
Yeah, he's the one that developed it he's the one that back engineered it from a lot of the
I know, but
a lot of the ships. So
that's in the book. But I still want to ask you, in other words, are there diagrams? I mean, have people tried to steal those memoirs from you? I mean, if this is in there.
Yes, they have.
Really?
Yes, they have. That was the whole point of the government bust up. Yeah, but it's I'm not gonna go into it, but yeah, they were hidden. They were hidden someplace where they couldn't get to them. But yeah, there was a.
That's awesome.
People came into the house and tore everything apart to get at those. That's how dangerous this stuff is.
Yeah. Okay.
So and to give you an idea, well, let me just tell you. So we've got the one big ship, which is 1,600 feet from tip to tail, and it's the USS Grissom. And then we have two other. I guess you could call that the aircraft carrier, if you will. Then we have two destroyer escorts, which are the USS John Glenn and the USS Alan Shepard. And then we've got 4 Vipers. The only one I know about was Hazel, which is the name of the Viper that I put in that was actually in the book. The other thing is that I mean, in book 2, I printed, and I actually got a patent on it and a copyright and the whole thing. And I've tried to approach physicists out there because I was told that this mathematical equation was the unified field theory. And I approached Mas Sajadi with this. It was a physicist. The Mas Sajadi? No, Harriman. Help me out. He's the Nassim.
Oh, Nassim Harriman. Yeah.
Nassim Harriman, which is all our friend. And, everybody knows him, and we've met him at the conferences. And he was at your conference that you did. I wish you'd do another conference again. I'll help you out with it.
Would you? Well, I wanted to do it actually, but every time I try to partner with somebody, they back out, and it drives me crazy. I'm not going to name somebody recently, but who basically was absolutely unavailable the minute they said go.
Okay, so we don't need to throw shade on anybody. I'm just saying that with Nassim, I met Nassim and I said, look, I've been looking for a scientist to look at this equation to tell me, if it's right, or if it's wrong, or if there's something we can do with it. I got a patent on it, and the idea for the patent was to develop a communications device that could be like a watch. I mean, what they developed, and you've seen in the book, is what looks like and this of course is back in the early 2000s, but it looks like an iWatch as an example, and it's got the computer screen on it. And the fascinating part is that it uses osteophone or neurophone technology, where it actually just transmits into the bones of your body so that you can hear it without anybody else listening to it. And then the device itself is then keyed into a supercomputer. But the whole point of the unified field theory was a way to show that you could communicate with anyone instantaneously anywhere in the universe. I mean, you could instantaneously control with an Xbox device a probe looking at Pluto as an example. Or it doesn't matter if we were at either ends of the Milky Way galaxy, we could communicate instantaneously. I mean, that's the point of the theory. And once you understand the unified field theory, and I gave the equation in the book, and I have yet to have anybody approach me and say, oh, this is a complete farce, this is totally fake. No one yet. I'm asking anybody out there that's a legitimate physicist or scientist to buy the book, take a look at it, and let me know if there's something that can be done with it. Because I mean, this is the amount of dangerous stuff that's in this book. You've got
all right. Well, you know what? You should give that equation to somebody like Elon Musk, who's trying to reinvent the wheel.
Okay, introduce me to Elon Musk. I know he's down here in Torrance.
Yeah.
How do I walk into Elon Musk?
Well, I mean, I'm trying to do it, Sean. Maybe we could do it together. I mean, I've tried to reach him. I've got a couple people, 6 degrees of separation. They tell me they know him. I actually am trying to reach him because there's a chance that, this August remote viewing event, it's possible that the splashdown of the Dragon, which is supposed to splash down on late August, might be the actual supersonic incoming object. We don't know what it is, But if it is man-made, it could be the dragon and it could go off course, but it is shot off course and it is made to go into a number of buildings in a big city. So okay, well, I'm trying to get that going. And I just want to say, I'm just going to say 1 second, because Sean, you're actually invited to be on this show as well. Jim Mars has agreed. Dick Algar has disappeared. He simply will not return my emails anymore. He said yes, very graciously. He wanted to do the show, and then nothing. I can't get word to him. He's not answering me, nothing. So something's up with this incident, and it's very important. So sorry about the soapbox here, but I want to save lives, and this is the kind of thing we're talking about. Over to you.
Well, okay, so are you talking about your show doing this, or are you talking about like an expo type show?
No, I'm talking about a show about the remote viewing incident of August.
Okay, well, all right. Look, I was one of the pioneers of this technique. I mean, it goes back all the way to doing summer school at Stanford University and doing some of the original experiments with SRI when they just, I mean, randomly.
Well, Ingo Swann was a pioneer.
I understand. Okay,
but I know you were involved with Russell Targ's daughter, wasn't it?
Elizabeth and I developed we were the ones that worked on the social remote viewing. Anyway, long story. I've been a remote viewer for forever. I've taught remote viewing classes all over the world, in Japan and Sweden and the United States.
I know you have.
And so, okay, so I looked at the video of Courtney Brown's thing. I like Courtney. I think Courtney's a fine guy. I think he's taken he took some bad flack, I think, back in the day from Art Bell that was completely undeserved. You and I have a differing opinion. I have never. Here's the challenge. When I took remote viewing and I combined it with the stuff that I learned when I lived in Nepal, and I lived at the Dalai Lama's, I don't know if you want to call it compound, but I lived in Dharamsala for about 4 months. I created a job there working with the kids. Benedict Cumberbatch eventually came in and took over. I know,
but this is something you can talk about when we do a show on the subject, because I don't want to get too far off the field.
You want me to talk? Okay, then I'll just lay it out then. So since the time, bottom line is that in my opinion, Courtney's a great guy, and I have never seen Courtney be right about anything in the future. Viewing objects in
it's not Courtney, it's 3 remote viewers, and they've been right since April, May, and June. They've done 3 public future remote viewings. They've already been proven right. They've released it on the internet. This is the 4th one, and we're waiting to find out what happens. They're not even saying they're right. Yeah, go ahead. It's all cool, but I'm just saying you've never seen them be right, but you have to understand that you haven't followed them very closely lately.
No, those 3 people, because I've never seen those 3 people before. I'm talking about Courtney and about the challenges and trouble that he's got by predicting certain things. Okay, here's my opinion. I watched it today. I looked at it. I'm not going to throw shade on anybody that tries remote viewing. Remote viewing is freaking hard. I mean, it's the hardest thing you can probably do. You're really just thrown into a black room and told to just feel your way around. So I'm not going to throw shade on anybody that's attempting anything. Let me also say, and I say this with all humility, no one has had more success using remote viewing in predicting future events than I have. And over the years, and this has been tested and trained in front of millions of people. I put it in print. I wrote it down so people can hit it with a stick or whatever else. Now, I think that the event that they're all looking at, this is my opinion, I think the event you're looking at is somewhere around August 21st, and I think it's going to be riots. I think it's going to be start somewhere in the southeast, and then these riots and that whether or not it's Black Lives Matter or whatever else, but I'm seeing African Americans and blacks rioting in the inner city and then moving up the East Coast. I think that's what's going to happen around August 21st. The challenge with your 3 viewers, you had an English guy, you had the older white American guy, and then you had the black girl, the pregnant black girl. We didn't speak the English language very well, but they all saw 3
I don't think there's any problem with her.
They saw 3 completely different things.
No, they didn't. Actually, they saw very, very similar things.
That's not true. I just watched the video. It's just
I've watched it several times.
What they saw. Here's what they saw. The English guy saw a building blowing up somewhere, somehow in a city, someplace, because there's no site to this. They haven't done any viewing of maps, as an example, or any what I call cartography, to actually see where the essence is going to be. So the English guy comes up with somebody's going to blow up a building somewhere.
Okay, Sean, I want you to do this on another show. So I appreciate that. You've given your opinion. You think it's a riot. You think it's a series of riots starting August 21st.
My opinion, it's a series of riots.
You're on the record. You're on the record. You're right or wrong.
You want me to talk about the 3 viewers at all? Okay.
No, I don't. Not on the show, because it's not appropriate, because they're not here to defend themselves. So that's not really appropriate.
I'm not attacking them. I'm simply telling you what they saw.
No, I know what they saw, because I saw the same thing you saw.
You don't want to tell everybody else what they saw.
No, but I don't think we're going to use this show for that purpose. We're going to talk about your book.
Okay, all right. That's
okay,
fine.
And you're invited to join us on a remote viewing show that I'm going to do with Jim Mars, who's written a book called Sci-Spies. You have a great background as well in this area. If I can get Dick Allgaier, we'll have him. If we can't, we'll just do a show without him. All I'm saying is that this discussion has to take place somewhere else. And you've said what you think is going to happen. That's fine. That's great.
I also think I'll give one more prediction for you. You want one?
Sure.
I've been saying this everywhere that I can say it. This is everything I can give you guys for free. That even though there's going to be some riots and chaos on August 21st, the real challenge is going to be the last week of October. Now, I don't know if it's going to be it's not an October surprise per se, but October 24, 25, 26, 27, all the way through the 1st of November, you're going to have challenges with earthquakes. Earthquakes in California, earthquakes in Southern California, earthquakes in Mexico, all along the San Andreas Fault the last week of October. Then, moving into the election, and it doesn't really matter, I tell everybody, who's going to win the election? Dick Cheney. He's going to win the election because he's in control, and he's always going to be in control. But somewhere around the middle of November, as I said, if you want doomsday prophecies and you want end time stuff, it's coming. And it doesn't matter.
Well, I don't want it. Thank you very much. But I do want to save lives if it's at all possible by giving them a heads up. So go ahead.
The last week of October, and I can explain why this is going on, and I'm going to give more details as to what I see happening. But there's a very specific pattern that goes on, which means that from the 24th of October through about the 1st, you're going to see massive earthquakes all around the world, but specifically in California, up and down the San Andreas in Mexico. That's the first part. The second one is around November 5th, all of November, you might as well just say the end of this year, that from the end of this year is going to be the beginning of the end of the financial systems and structures. If you're talking about an RV, if you're talking about the collapse of the US dollar, if you're talking about currencies, all of it's going to start in November. And this is going to lead all the way from November of this year to one of the lowest points in human history, which means global war and whatever else happening. But it goes all the way down to about 2018, 2019, and it goes all the way through the low point. It's going to be 2018. All the way through 2022. And then from 2022 to 2023, we start kind of climbing our way back up. But we're talking about massive death in the third world. We're talking about possibly the end or disruption of oil. But whatever it's going to be economically is going to be the implosion that we're talking about begins this November, no matter who gets elected. And you might say, if all you born-again Christians out there are people that believe in the apocalypse, then you should probably vote for Hillary Clinton, because then she gets to be the whore of Babylon that sits upon the great red beast and destroys the world. So there you go.
Okay, well, excellent. Thank you very much for that, Sean David Morton. I want to ask you if I heard you say on a show that some of those predictions actually come from an elderly Israeli man rather than yourself. Can you elaborate?
And on the silly, I've talked about this for forever, and we're talking about in the 90s. I was friends with an Israeli mathematician. I don't know if he wants me to use his name or not, but an Israeli mathematician that only had to do with stock market predictions. And the stock market predictions were, and I talked about this a lot, but we were talking about Fibonacci. We were talking about Elliott waves. And people who are familiar with Elliott waves, this was how we managed to make our stock market. And I didn't make any secret of it. I could still actually do charts and see where the numbers were going to go, which had to do with the futures of the prices of gold or silver, or something I actually wasn't marketed on the market. But if you understand Elliott waves, that everything goes in a Fibonacci wave or spiral as it unravels. And the bottom of this stock market cycle was Black Friday. Was it Black Friday or Black Tuesday? It was October 17th of 1987, and that was when all the markets went down. And taking that day, and I've told the story a couple of times, and taking that day and then using Elliott waves or Fibonacci waves, literally, in that aspect, Eliyahu was his name. He and I managed to get together and look at these various things. Now, he would call me on the phone and say, today you'll see the market, it will go through this point. And I was like, that's crazy. It's not going to, and I'd sit there and watch it, and the thing would be way down here, and then it would go whoop, and it would hit exactly the point where we talked about, stay there for, I don't know, 5-10 minutes or so, and then come down the other side. I mean, it really was amazing. And it was a system that worked. So back in the 90s, this was back when the stock market was like 2,000, 3,000 or so, if everybody can remember that far back. When I tell Art Bell, well, it's going to go to 5, and it's going to go to 7, and it's going to go to 8, the stock market will be 10,000, and it's going to go to 12, and it's going to go to 17, it's going to go to 18. So I'm the only one that's made all these predictions all these years to talk about how the market was going to go crazy. And I still think the market's probably, well, as much play as it has, it's already been above 18,000. But my prediction for the market was about 20,000 or so right before the big collapse, and we're there now. And if you want to go all the way back to Eldridge Cleaver and the great dinner that we had with my parents and Eldridge Cleaver and Ayn Rand, Eldridge Cleaver laid out this other prophecy for America, saying, look, they're going to make a black man president of the United States. And when they make the black man president of the United States, that's when they're going to drop the hammer, and they're going to use the inner city blacks to rise up in these cities, burn them down, and then come down with martial law. He says, but you mark my words of how this is going to come down, how they're going to institute the New World Order. This is Eldridge Cleaver, after he just got back from Algeria.
Very astute, very astute.
And Eldridge was the one that said, look, because I saw it happen in Algeria. And I know exactly what these New World Order, quote, mother effers are going to do. And you watch if it doesn't happen. And here we are. So it all depends on,
look at, Michael Prince also told us over a year ago on a video of mine interview with him that's what they were working on. They were working on getting basically race wars to happen here in the United States. So, so yes. Thank you very much for that. I got to say, I think that's kind of ludicrous. I think that's really old school stuff, and I don't think that's the way to change the world. But whatever, people, if people are going to be led.
Baltimore and Ferguson, have you seen what's been happening? And Obama getting up going, you shouldn't kill cops, but I understand.
Well, but a lot of this is also fake. I mean, we got false flags all over the place. This whole thing in Texas was complete false flag. So this is bogus. Look,
you and I know that, Kerry, but again, this is what they use to control the population.
I know. So, but look, this is great, and people are getting a bonus. They don't realize it because you're actually going, off book here, and we're supposed to be talking about your new book. So I just want to make sure that we talk about your new book.
Okay, all right. No, we're talking about you. You told me. You specifically said for this interview to watch those 3 people on the remote viewing.
No, it wasn't for this interview, Sean. Right, okay, you misunderstood. I was trying to tell you I'm trying to do an interview with Dick Allgaier. That's how this started.
I heard that.
Okay, so it's nothing to do with your interview. Okay.
Protocol again.
All right, excellent. So to get back on track, I want to find out, you say you have this technology, you're talking about the Viper technology. Just how much were you?
Have it. It's like I said, it was described to me.
It was described to you, and then you put it in the book.
Right, and to what the interiors were, and as far as the science of it goes, okay. Let me give you the one other thing here is how this all intersects. In 1993, in August of 1993, there was phenomenon that was happening in Southern California, and this phenomenon had to do with I'm standing in my house in Hermosa Beach. And suddenly the ceiling starts to shake, and then the windows, and then the floors, and it was like an earthquake completely in reverse. So we thought, that was weird. So we turn on Channel 7, and there's Paul Moyers back in the day. And Paul Moyers says, we've gone to Caltech for this weird earthquake. And there's Kate Hutton, this redhead lady at Caltech. And Kate Hutton comes along and says, well, something was coming in from space, and it was traveling at approximately Mach 25. And it created, this is on the TV, it created a shockwave that caused the phenomenon of about a 3.5 quake that we're now calling skyquakes. And they said, well, whatever this object was, and they said it was 2 objects, and that's the lie. They said there were 2 objects that were actually coming in, traveling Mach 25, exactly like in the book, by the way, where these things come in smeared, as they call them, instead of cloaked, they call it smeared. Hit the smear, because this thing smears on the outside so that you can't see it. And she said these things landed at Area 51. Well, this is on the TV, and of course, I made Area 51 famous by that time from all the tours and the LA Times articles and all this other stuff. But it's They then said this thing landed at Area 51. Of course, the military denies all knowledge of this. So myself and my late friend, John Hadley, God bless him, were out at Area 51 when we actually saw this thing land. We saw this thing that was 1,600 feet from tip to tail. Had the back end was scooped up like a 66 Corvette, had 3 big retros on the back of it, big blunt shovel nose. So it was like 2 door stops kind of put together, black on the bottom, white on the top. And it had all kinds of chase planes. It had jets and helicopters and all kinds of stuff. This thing was humongous. And instead of actually coming in and landing on the runway, which is weird because when you're out on the road on Highway 375 and you're looking towards Bald Mountain, all the stuff comes in and lands on this big 7-mile runway right in front of Hangar 18. This one came around us, went over Rachel, the town, and then came the other side of Bald Mountain. And then the thing just hung in the air for a moment, and the whole thing came down. And that was the only time that the Wackenhut guys really chased us. I mean, this is when John said, we got to go. And we jumped in his truck, and then the Wackenhut guys are coming out of nowhere. And he blacked out the lights, his tail lights.
Wait, is that John Lear, you mean?
No, it's John Hadley. John Lear I took to the hilltop for his birthday on December 6th of 91, actually, and then he blabbed it to everybody. I tried to keep it secret. Tried to keep it secret at the time because I was still interviewing people that were actually had worked inside the base. And I said, fine, if you work there, here's a pencil piece of paper, show me what it looks like. Because, very few people knew what it looked like. John had photographed the base really for the first time in the late 80s when he just walked over a hill and you could just go to this piece of chain. It wasn't even a fence. It was just a piece of chain between posts. And, he photographed it. But I took pictures of it from the hilltop that I found that actually then looked down on the base. So what I'm saying is that this craft that got screwed up out there, this was the USS Grissom. This was the 1,600-foot battleship that we've got that kind of patrols that patrols the solar system. And it's
Very
interesting
cool.
because in the notes, I then see that the reason that the Grissom actually had to land was because there was something that was not calibrated correctly about how it flew. And so, this was a surprise to me because suddenly seeing in the notes that this was an explanation of why the Grissom landed where it did and what it was doing and what the problem or the challenge was. And I had, at the time it happened, when I had my Delphi Associates newsletter, did an interview with Dr. Humphrey, or I just called him Deep Space at that time, who gave me a whole explanation as to what was happening with the skyquakes and how they get into this, the ship. The ship gets into a trough, mind you. The Grissom, for example, in the book, is at the edge of Pluto, the orbit of Pluto, and they were called back.
Oh yeah, I love that thing that you talked about, that trough, and that's very cool. So can you, explain what you meant by it?
They don't even understand it. They just know that you get into sort of a groove, and this groove is somehow outside of time and space. And it allows you to travel at fantastic speeds. And so, for example, the trip for the Grissom to make it back from Pluto to Cape Malabar Radio on the moon, for them, it was about 72 hours. I think I'm just trying to remember in my head. It was about 72 hours. But for us, in real time, it was only about 14 hours or so. So that gives you an idea how time dilates or travels differently according to the various fields of relativity. And what they do is they get in a groove between, I guess, what you would call dimensional space, where suddenly you can just travel at about 9/10 of the speed of light and just go, amazing distances. And all of this again is a lot of reverse technology stuff that we got from capturing the saucers from Project Pounce. But also, remember, the large majority of this, and this is the big thing, and this is what I'm going to cover in the next book, and it's slightly covered in this book, because I also explain the fate of the Nazi bell. For example, the Nazi bell was being used by Hans Kammler and Corbett and Ratterman, and they were trying to ratchet this thing up to, and what it was doing is it was generating what are called solitons. And solitons are a really interesting new introduction to this, because a soliton is time as a wave. Now, remember, if you go back to gravity, it was one of those things where we know everything that gravity does, thanks to Newton, thanks to Einstein, but we don't know how to make gravity. In other words, the minute you know what gravity does, but we don't know what it is. And so the minute you can actually generate gravity, the same way you would generate microwaves or X-rays or gamma rays, now you're in a whole new world where time doesn't exist, where space doesn't exist, where you can build you can build New York City with a box of Legos, basically, because you're not having to deal. You're dealing with weight without having to really, or mass without having to deal with weight. So it doesn't matter if I'm picking up this book and it weighs, I don't know, if it weighs a pound or it weighs 100,000 pounds. It doesn't make any difference one way or the other. So when we captured German, and here's what happened with the Bell, is that now the Bell gets loose and they're trying to do some last-ditch efforts and some experiments with this, and it rips open this mountain and it rips open the time-space continuum. And I describe how it actually lands in Kecksburg, Pennsylvania, in 1964, and how it's then recovered by the group, and how a bunch of other scientists actually came forward with it because they got sucked with it through time.
And I told you how Clark McClelland has been on my show, and for everyone listening, you should go listen to Clark talk about the Kecksburg Bell, because he really stresses this. And you know, I loved in your book how you described it, because you actually sort of build everything up to the moment it shows up in Kecksburg. And it is like literally a time travel sort of blow by blow, right?
Look, until I got these notes, I didn't know anything about it. I mean, I didn't know anything about the Kecksburg Bell. I knew there was an incident they called the Kecksburg incident. That something.
Well, I knew about it, but I never visualized it the way you explain it. You explained it very well.
Thank you. Well, I didn't know anything about it until I started writing the book, and I put that episode in because I wanted to include it and show, this is another reason why I wrote the book in the third person. I wanted to include that event because a lot of these events are leading up to the next book, which is going to be book 4. So you got to read this one, because book 4 is going to be all about basically Ted bouncing through time and actually interacting with these people and these individuals and why this is important. And it's also, we're working on a TV series now called Vril, which is going to go all the way back to the period of time. And the producer, the guy with the money, I got excited about this because I kept telling him, look, the biggest mystery of the 20th century, bar none, is how the Germans from about 1915, 16, 17 go from Sopwith camels and biplanes made out of canvas and wire to having basically interplanetary spacecraft by the time we hit about 1945. Where the hell did that come from? And where did it go? And that mystery alone then launches us into, oh my goodness, into bases in Antarctica, bases in, bases in the hollow Earth, if you will.
Okay. Yes.
The whole thing. And that launches us in a whole new deal, a whole new conspiracy level, but also a possibility of a whole nother evolutionary spiral for humanity.
All right. Well, thank you. That's awesome. And I'm sure that people are going to be very interested to read the 4th book when it comes out. But I want to ask you, just wait one second, because you're not on the screen right this second. And I want to tell people or get around to this situation, because this is an interesting thing. You know, I do a lot of investigation around the secret space program, etc. And I'm very interested in your work because of what you're bringing forward from this guy, Ted Humphreys. And I think a lot of people, they don't really realize what they're getting in your books. They don't understand when they're seeing the truth, and they don't understand what interesting inside information you've had in your own life and why you've had it, etc. And people need to listen up. That's what I'm saying. When Sean's talking, this isn't BS. This is real. And I do also want to say to you, Sean, I want to ask you a question. And this is more of you might call it a philosophical question, because what we have in the early days of the space program, and you know that Mark Richards, Captain Mark Richards, who was flying one of these amazing craft, he called them the Orion craft at that time. And he also flew an artificially intelligent craft called Minerva that was from another galaxy, actually. And he was the only one, apparently, who could fly her.
Oh,
he's in prison.
I'd love it. Oh, okay, that's Mark. Okay, that's right.
Yeah, he's in prison in Vacaville, and yet he has been reading your books. I think you sent him a couple. You haven't sent him the newest one yet, I don't imagine. But
just got it last week. I have an envelope with his name on it right now.
Excellent. So what I want to say about all this is these people who were working for the secret space program back in the day believed they were doing the right thing, believed they were, you know, protecting the earth from invasion, etc. And yet what has happened out of that is this whole New World Order and this whole sort of crackdown on information, et cetera, et cetera. So what I want to know is where you think the takeover happened, if you think it was part of paperclip or what, and where the philosophy of the secret space program has gone so off track as to become sort of married and welded to what is in essence a clamp down on the human race known as the New World Order. So do you have any explanation from your perspective?
Actually, all through the book, all through all 3 books, Ted Humphrey goes, I mean, it goes on page after page after page of him talking about what do we do? You know, he has his fingers on all this technology, and, you know, they can change the world and they can do all kinds of amazing things, and we can, you know, really drag us into a whole future of, you know, that's glorious and amazing. And yet, if you look at probably 2/3 of the world's population, if you look at what's going on, his whole thing is, if you help one group of people, you harm another group of people. If you, I mean, it goes all the way back to, I still remember an incident in India where they have like 50 guys that are moving rocks. They pick up the rocks, they move them over there. Then they get them to pick up the rocks and move them back. And I'm like, why don't you buy a truck? And the guy goes, what? And put 50 men out of work by buying a truck. And so Ted goes on ad nauseum, actually, in the book, talking about how we have all this amazing technology, but how do we introduce it to the world to the point where, okay, we're going to kill the oil industry, we're going to kill manufacturing, we're going to, you know, and there are, there is a third alternative wave, and I'm sure that it's probably happening somewhere in the jungles of Brazil somewhere, or somewhere in Antarctica, or wherever, where this technology has been released. Again, the minute you upset the whole oil industry and you take petroleum out of the mix and you put all those people out of work. And
and it's a good thing.
You have to understand, you have to retool all of society. You have to
but it's already happening behind the scenes. They're using free energy. You know that, right? In fact, our electrical companies, there's evidence that they're actually running electricity off of free energy nowadays.
Okay, well, once again,
I'm putting your book on the screen so people can see the name.
I'm sorry, what?
I'm putting your book on the screen right now so people can see it, because some people are joining us late and haven't listened to what has come before. So for those that joined us late, this is the title and the book cover of Sean David Morton's new book. This is what we're talking about. You can buy it if you click onto my website, projectcamelotportal.com, and click on the banner ad for the show tonight. You will find his book for sale there, or go to the Camelot store. You can click through Amazon using those sites. So that's where it's at. You can buy it. Please do help support Sean's work by buying his books.
Thank you so much.
And keeping him alive so he can continue to do some good work. You don't make any money off of radio, huh, Sean?
No. No.
And that's key. And a lot of people don't realize that, you know, that we don't make any money doing what we're doing. You know,
no, it sure would be nice to find, I don't know, anybody out there with syndication or whatever else, because I don't know. Anyway, to answer your other question about the technology, I'm just saying you have to retool all of society. It's now they did it with Henry Ford. I mean, they did it with the internal combustion engine and cars and whatever else, and put horses out of business. I don't see why they couldn't do it, you know, the next wave or whatever's going on. But look, the group that controls the technology that I talk about in this book, they just leave the politicians to do whatever they're going to do. Their job now is to make sure, and I've said this over and over and over again about because there's the secret government and then you have the financial guys. They just leave. I mean, there were a number of conversations with Clinton in the book that I think are hilarious, that basically say, look, you're never going to come over to my office again and threaten me, or I've got 1,000 guys who will paint the walls of that stupid rented White House you're in with your blood if you bother me again. And, you know, we took out Kennedy, we take out whoever we want. You're not going to get in our way of protecting the planet. Here's their conundrum. Number one is protecting the Earth from all threats, foreign and domestic. And there's a lot of stuff out there that hates us. Number two, there are raiding parties of beings that still come here that round up a bunch of human beings and take us to other places to basically carve us up for our DNA. We're amazingly valuable storehouses of genetic information. Number three, there's something wrong with the sun. And there's been something wrong with the sun since about the early 90s or so. And so there is a concerted effort with certain alien races, but with our technology as well, to basically calm down the sun. And you've seen a couple of incidences of this. For example, Barack Obama took all his buddies to Norway to get the Nobel Peace Prize, which is the biggest joke ever. But he has this posse of like 93 people that follow him to these weird places. The Norway Spiral, Nelson Mandela's fake funeral when we knew Mandela had died like 6 months before. So they all visit the Temple of the Unknown God. He took everybody down to Argentina for some weird reason. But the Norway Spiral was an example of creating a zero-point energy black hole in between us and the sun that lasted about 9 minutes that actually then pulled energy off the sun. And the other thing, and I've talked about this for forever, since I was the first one that started saying that before the Northridge quake happened, I was saying there's going to be an earthquake, it's going to be in Northridge, and it's going to be artificial. And that was through remote viewing, and that was through cartomancy, and the whole team that I was working with on earthquakes. We're on the news every week. Matter of fact, they sent Channel 9 up to my house because I said an earthquake of a 6.5 was going to happen on a Tuesday, and they sent the guys to my house, and as they're walking up the front door to my house, the earthquake happened while they were standing in the hallway. So instead of being, oh, here's the fake psychic that predict the earthquake, they were in my house saying, here's the guy that predicted the earthquake today. So we were on Channel 9 all the time predicting this stuff. So again, they are specifically maneuvering the planet in such a way so that the nodal axis of the Earth is actually shifting, and they're creating a series of earthquakes as well that are keeping major land masses from fracturing. For example, I agree with the conclusions of somebody like Benjamin Fulford. I completely agree with him that the Fukushima earthquake was triggered by an atomic weapon where the HAARP project was then used to kick the wave up to then actually create that earthquake. But we disagree in the fact that I am firmly convinced that Fukushima was triggered to basically save the rest of Japan, relieve the pressure on the Cascadia fault line, and save places like Seattle, Vancouver, Portland, basically the entire Pacific Northwest. So I'm watching each of these earthquakes, and the next big one that's going to come is going to be the last. It's going to be the last 6 days of October. And I'm telling you that as these quakes are rolling in the cycle, and then we have the next big quake, there will be another quake that will actually move the nodal axis of the planet, because they're trying to actually bring us into alignment with galactic center. That's number one. And number two, realign the land masses so that you don't have the Edgar Cayce kind of reality of where Colorado's a seaport and Japan sinks and and all of this. So this is another thing that the super technology is being used for: readjusting the planetary orbit and the nodal axis, readjusting the geographic landmass, protecting us from stuff, angry beings out there in the universe. And so anyway, so that's what a lot of the super technology is being used for. And I've been able to predict these things as we go along because of not only the psychic ability and remote viewing, but techniques from everything from remote viewing to living in a monastery to developing this stuff from ever since I was very young. Okay,
well, I have to say I disagree with some of that, but be that as it may, what I'm doing here is, Sean, some people are asking about buying your book, and I'm giving them a link to Amazon and through my website as well.
Oh, okay, if they can go to support, if they can just go to strangeuniverseradio.com.
All right.
Then they don't have to go through Amazon, and we don't have to, and all that stuff. But strangeuniverseradio.com, and you can get it.
All Kindle. Right. Very good.
We've got Kindle. We've got audio on all the books. And by the way, just one other thing. So just for people to join late, there's book 1. Here is book 2. Sands of Time. This is 1 and 2. You have to read 1 and 2 together because they're basically the same novel. We have the last one, which is book 3 here. And last but not least, as a special, if you want to do, my other 2 books that I wrote, this is the book where I predicted everything that went on in the Middle East, called The Dark Prophet. And if you buy that one, this is book 1 in that series, and we'll give you this one for free if you want to buy Dark Prophet. But this book I wrote in 2009, and I predicted the massive waves of immigration into Europe, and that this was basically an act of conquest, that there was going to be an invasion of Islam into Europe. And this is all about what the Vatican, and my main character in there is basically a Jesuit spy who has to figure out how to stop this third great Nostradamus Antichrist. And that won a bunch of awards too, and sold a bunch of books and all that. So the books are great. They've all got 5-star ratings on Amazon. The reviews are fantastic, and everybody loves them. And,
okay, now let me ask you a question that's coming from the chat. We do have a chat room associated with the show,
Yep.
and so it's been great to hear from you, Sean. And someone is asking how much fiction is in your books. So why don't you say how much fiction is in this particular book, Isomer Protocol?
Well, let's just say I fictionalized them to keep myself from being killed. And I would say that everything is right out of the journal. So, for example, the fictional aspect of it would be just creating a conversation of characters, and because what I'm putting into that is I'm trying to get the point across of what the journals are saying, and at the same time in Isomer Protocol, for example, there was a report on what happened with the Nazi bell. And so what I did is I took that and I made it exciting. I put dialogue in between the people. So I've taken factual information and I've simply turned it into an adventure story. So I don't know if that's fictionalizing something. That's like my writing a story about you and I having dinner or something. How much of it is fictional because it's my opinion that KERRY was glorious and she took me to dinner and it was wonderful and she's amazing and all that. So
absolutely,
I can't really say that. I've done the best that I can to take a true story, a somewhat dry scientific report, and juice it up so that it's readable, so that there's action and adventure in it, some romance, and all that. But all of it came directly from the notes. And the only reason I decided to do third person in this next one is, for example, I got to add some scientific things. For example, I think people should be looking into, and I talk about this quite a bit, you want to talk about free energy? We've had a free energy device since 1945, and people need to look into Dr. Hans Kohler. And Hans Kohler's device is what allowed us to be able to create the shield around the body of the person that was actually bouncing through time. So just by understanding and decoding a report that had been in front of us for 70 years, that suddenly we discovered the Hans Kohler device, and so I give the whole report from the MI5 file of the Hans Kohler device. I had to find a way to explain. It was a very, very dry section that had to do with explaining the mechanics and the nature of time travel. So Ted does go back and talk to his family in Russia with Irina and Theodore and Sasha, and so I created a scene where they're all talking around a table and they take out some wax paper and they're all drawing on it. So I guess you could say that was fictionalized because that was a better way for me to impart the conversation that they have and to explain to the reader the basics of how you actually travel through time. Because here was the problem. The challenge is that, and by the way, today, this is kind of a great date in history for me, but it's the birthday of Dr. Fred Bell. And Fred.
Is it today?
Today's Fred's birthday, and had he been with us, and of course he died in 2011 or so, I think it was.
And he knew a great deal about time travel.
Not only did he know a great deal about this, but when I was a kid in college, going down to his house in Laguna Beach, he had a house that was built on top of a dormant volcano, and we built a time machine that I saw with my own eyes disappear twice in his backyard. This thing was 4 stories high and kind of a pyramid on the top and on the bottom, and had a seat in the middle. And I was the one that shimmied up the pole that connected this thing to the grid of the city, so we could pull the switch to make this thing work. And Fred had a working time machine in his backyard. The problem was, each time that Fred made these bounces through time, he was messed up. I mean, we had to take him to the hospital. He had blood coming out of his nose and his ears, and because here's what we found out is that we could transport things from place to place. And this all, if you go all the way back to the first and second books, and then all the way through this one, we could transfer things from place to place, but we could never transport organic material. You couldn't put a person or a plant or a monkey or whatever it was through the device without them coming back completely messed up on the other side. What we could do is we could transport mass, and we had that. So what this book was all about is that how do we actually develop it so you can have a human being travel into the future or travel into the past? Because here's the problem. One of the things that we learned from the Philadelphia experiment, when the Philadelphia experiment happened, and on August 12th of 1943, and when the Eldridge went, and this is all in the first book in the dossier report, it was like time-space had been crumpled like an accordion. And when we did this, it was at the behest of we believe, a very dark race of extraterrestrials that they called the K group, that said you have to perform this experiment on this particular day at this particular time. Little beknownst to us, the entire Earth, our biorhythmic patterns of the Earth, or spirit, physical, and whatever else, we're at a 20-year low. And every 20 years, 43, 63, 83, 2003, these lows go in this kind of weird pattern. So all time had been crunched up like an accordion. So that way, when the Eldridge actually went through, the Eldridge pierced this accordion and went all the way to the end of its tether on August. It reached the end of its tether about August 13th of 2003. Now, I wrote a whole article in February of that year saying, if this is true, if the story is true, then you're going to see a massive influx of energy come into the East Coast that'll probably black out the entire East Coast. And I wrote that article in February in my newsletter, and I'll send it out to people if they want to see it. But that's what happened. The entire East Coast blacked out. New York for 3 days, the rest of a whole chunk of the Northeast for 28 days or so, because that was the Eldridge reaching the end of its tether, exploding. Edison said whatever happened was a surge that occurred in the blink of an eye. It was in the paper. And then the thing goes back through time and reappears in 1943. Well, now as time-space then opens up, now you have these every 20 years you have these holes in the fabric of time and space that then allowed an invasion of this planet, an interdimensional invasion from two different universes, one from where the Germans had ripped holes in time and space, and the other one from the Eldridge. The other thing about the Eldridge is that the men who weren't phased into the deck were suddenly out of phase with time. Every person has what we call a zero time point within the body, and that zero time point directly relates to the zero time point at the center of the galaxy. So at the middle of the galaxy, right at the dead center of the galaxy, at the middle of a light year across black hole, time is sort of moving like this. Every single one of us actually has that zero time point within us. That's like a hook. And what that hook is that then you hang the physical meat on the spirit, which is then you have the physical body, and then you have the emotional body, and then the spiritual body. I'm sorry, it's the physical body, the mental body, emotional body, spiritual body, astral body, causal body, and then you go all the way out to the etheric body, and then all the way out to the causal body. So it means that you have 7 chakras in your energy field, and those chakras have 7 chakras. So you've got like 49 chakras. The problem is that when you are transmuting people through time, the energy field that we call the causal body is involved with creating time. In other words, time is very much a creation of the mass consciousness of humanity. We are, in fact, creating the time field as we approach it. The Buddhists used to say that an apple isn't an apple until you perceive it to be one. And that's exactly true. Time is literally being organized at the moment that we interact with it. So the problem with this is that the oculus of the time machine was sucking us from the causal body first through this oculus of the time machine and putting us together backwards where it was we were going, which is why when people were coming back, they were massacred. They were just all completely messed up. Because now, and this is with the Eldridge guys, suddenly they would just go into this weird phase and they would start shaking uncontrollably. And it's like a man holding onto a rock in a raging stream, where now that his shoes come off and his pants and his coat, and layer by layer, it just gets sucked into the time stream. And then the person itself just turns into, literally becomes one with the sands of time, so to speak. So what we had to find is a way to create a protective shield that extended outwards to the causal body. And once you created that bubble, now you could pass through the oculus without being turned inside out. Does that make sense?
Yes, actually. Is this what you're talking about in the book?
Yeah.
This particular oculus, is that what you're calling it?
Well, I call it an oculus because it's the point in time space that you're sort of sucked through.
Okay, but this shield, what do you call the shield?
Well, it's actually that's where the Kohler device came in, because we discovered that the Kohler device, Captain Hans Kohler, put a device together where you could put in about a volt of energy into this device. And look, you can find it all over the internet. I mean, it's, there's plans to build one if you want, but a volt of energy can be then turned into 12 volts of energy, which then breaks the second law of thermodynamics, which means that you're generating more energy than you're actually taking in, which theoretically is impossible. And the British investigated and said, yeah, it doesn't, but we don't know what to do with it. Well, we found out what to do with it, because now we can use it to actually power the man-powered time runner, and at the same time use it to create the shield around a person. And it's kind of neat, because what happens is that first the energy field goes red, and then it goes through all the processions of the aura, and then it creates like this white light bubble around the person, so that when you get to the place where you're going, you are now protected. You're not being turned inside out. Now, as we move forward, probably the time devices now, you don't get the same visualization of the effect, but it's there, and now they have the protective shield they can use to actually have a person jump through time. The question is, can you manipulate time? Are there ways to actually go back and manipulate time? And we're finding that you can't really. You can adjust the quinta of time on a personal level, but you can't adjust the quantum, because the quantum of time is a unified field experience.
Well, but if there's multiple timelines, you can shift people from one timeline to another, and that seems to be what's actually happening.
Yes, very good. And let me give you one scientific aspect of this. This is an absolute true story. I took a couple of people to a USC football game, and it was a friend of mine and her son, who was about 20, 25, 26 years old, actually worked at CERN on the Large Hadron Collider. And so it was halftime, and we were hanging out, getting a drink or whatever it was. And I asked him, I said, so what's the deal with CERN? I mean, here you have this multi-billion-dollar device, and the damn thing never works. And he gave me this, and I thought he was pulling my leg when he said it. He said, we do have a theory about that. He says, the machine can't not work. And yet when we flip the switch, it doesn't, which basically defies all the laws of physics. So when we pull the switch on this thing and it goes, it's absolutely impossible for it to not work, and yet it doesn't. And he says, so here's what we think. We think that since we live in a holographic universe, and if you've ever played a video game, you get to a point where you get destroyed, and then you can click a button and you go back and you kind of reset it. We actually have a theory that what's going on is that every time we turn the CERN Hadron Collider on, it destroys the world, and or the universe, and or the galaxy, or whatever else. But because it's a holographic universe, what happens is we then, at the moment of destruction, jump to a more successful timeline where the device doesn't work at all, and we survive. Now I said, that is the greatest excuse for institutional incompetence that I have ever heard. And I thought he was kidding me. And 6 months later, front page, LA Times, actually has the exact same story that he told me about how every time they turn the collider on, it destroys the world, and that we simply jump to a parallel timeline where we were not destroyed, and the Hadron Collider didn't work.
Yeah, I think that's highly possible, actually.
Front page of the LA Times. Well, if it's a holographic universe, I mean, every video game has a reset button. And
absolutely. Now, listen, we've been going for quite a while here, and one thing I want to do is just allow people to ask their questions.
Absolutely.
So, again,
round.
Sorry?
Lightning round. Roll them up. Let's get them.
Okay. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to look in the chat and see if you all have any questions. So if you can put your questions in all caps and retype them at this point now, so I don't have to go all the way back.
So let me put it out there again. And once again, strangeuniverseradio.com for the books. We have them in Kindle. We have the audio of all the books. That's Sands of Time, Volume 1, 2, and 3. We also have audio of Dark Prophet, Veil of the Antichrist, and Black Seraph, Volume 1, Veil of the Antichrist, number 2. Now, it's in Kindle, it's in audio, it's in the books, it's everything. Now, and I also please put the challenge out there. And I've actually, Nassim Harriman, he just disappeared after this, but anybody, if you're a physicist or a scientist or whatever out there, and you can take a look at the unified field theory for me and give me some opinion on it. I don't know. I mean, I took 2 years of college physics. That's all I know about it. It's way beyond me. So if you have any scientists out there that want to take a crack at the unified field theory, my idea of patenting it was to try to get somebody to invest in it, to actually create a superluminal communications device that would allow us instantaneous communications with anyone, anywhere in the universe.
Fair enough. Listen, someone, if you try to ask intelligent questions, I'm looking for some good questions here.
Okay. Aren't any intelligent questions like?
Well, you know, I don't know. They're sort of chatting with each other, so a lot of them aren't really questions. But no, someone wants to know if you know Andy Basiago.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, and do you have any opinion on his information, or do you want to say anything about him?
Again, he's a nice man. You know, he seems very intelligent. He's an attorney, and up until he tells you he's going to be president of the United States this year. So, you know, I'm like, great, Andy, I'll vote for you. It's, you know, who knows with the way things are going.
Yeah, right.
Andy's great, but I also think that, you know, he has, you know, he's not hurting anybody, and he has an interesting story. And I can tell you that everything I've tried to check, for example, I mean, I've gone over to the corner of El Segundo. I got over to the corner of Sepulveda.
Sepulveda, yes.
I've gone up there and I've talked to people who, but I talked to people who worked there at the period of time that he said that there was a jump room to Mars, and that the 999 looks like 666s when they came down. And unfortunately, that whole part of anything I've been able to check as far as the story goes has not been verifiable. Let's put it that way.
Okay. You know, someone wants to know, is Jesus of the Bible an ET? Yes, that's like duh. But we are ETs as well. So, Sean, do you want to answer that question, or I mean, come on, can we have some intelligent questions here? I mean, no offense, but that sounds like you've been living under a rock for the last 10 years.
There's an interesting connection between Jesus saying, using the phrase "Son of God, Son of Man." Everybody knew back then that came from the Book of Enoch. And Enoch talked about himself as being the Son of God, Son of Man, and everybody knew that was the possibility that he was the offspring of Yahweh. Remember, the Book of Enoch we didn't have. Enoch was rather savagely edited out of the Old Testament text until we found it in an Ethiopian Bible that dates itself back to Solomon and the Queen of Sheba in 1777. Now you can buy that book at Jubilee Press, I think, or so. But everybody at that time, when Jesus said, "I'm the Son of God, Son of Man," knew exactly what he was talking about. He was referring to himself in terms of possibly being the reincarnation of Enoch, and Enoch was supposedly half human, half extraterrestrial. So
very likely even Anunnaki. So here's a person asking if Californians need to pack their bags and move out before the last week of October.
It's going to get weird. It's going to get bad. So my suggestion is just listen to my Strange Universe radio show. I'm going to be doing some whole shows on it. But look, everything I've said about what was going to happen in California is happening. You've just had I said, first off, we're going to have fires, and fires right on top of the San Andreas Fault. Guess what? Just had those. That's when they were closing off Santa Clarita and the entire area.
We have fires every year in California, though, Sean.
Not exactly true.
It is true.
The fires that we've had this year.
I've lived in California all my life. Southern California always has fires. Okay,
well, it's also in the exact period of time that I was saying, within 90 days of when this is going to happen. But I'm just saying, if you look at where the fires were this year, the brush fires leading into the 14 freeway in Santa Clara, I mean, they're right on top of the San Andreas Fault, all through there.
Okay.
And usually, whenever you have fires, it's usually a preclusion to earthquakes. So as far as packing your bags goes, again, it's not about cracking it, but they've also done some sneaky things too. I mean, we were due for a major earthquake in San Francisco in the timeline that I was talking about, and then I said, when I looked at the maps, that it was going to be Mexico. And you had, right in my time frame, you had a 7.4 and a 7.6 exactly in the place where I said it was going to be. But the Mexicans were not only prepared for it, they had National Earthquake Preparedness Day. They emptied the schools, they emptied the factories, they gave people hard hats, and while people were standing outside, they had the earthquakes on the San Andreas down in Mexico.
Yeah,
there's a pattern. There's a 188-day pattern to these quakes, and if you look at each one of these quakes, if you start with Fiji, and you can trace this all the way back to the New Madrid Fault in 1812 and 1813. Which is probably going to blow again next year when the eclipse comes across the middle part of the United States in August. That's going to be a big deal because that eclipse the penumbra of the eclipse is dead center over the kill point of the Madrid Fault. But if you actually look at you have the Fiji quake. 188 days later was the Bio quake, the 8.3 in Chile, which also adjusted the nodal axis of the Earth by about 5 inches. Then you had the Christchurch quake 188 days later. Then 188 days after that, you had Fukushima, which then adjusted the nodal axis of the Earth by 6.5 inches.
Well, it's important to also understand that these are man-made quakes, and therefore they're actually using a computer to figure out when to do these, when to trigger these. I mean, we're living with weather wars and weather weapons, and there's ample evidence that these quakes have been all orchestrated. So I appreciated that.
Orchestrating a pattern.
Yes.
Once you actually, and by the way, the pattern was discovered by Cornell University, and this is a PhD paper.
It's one thing to discover a pattern; it's another thing to create it.
Okay, there you go. All right, one way or another, the quakes happen on the.
Yeah, I know.
And so whether or not you want to say, okay, so again,
are you leaving town? Let's see, end of October, going into November, Sean?
Yeah, I'll be somewhere else for a while. If we get our film company going, I'm probably going to go live in Hungary for 2 years, working out of Corda Studios there. But we'll see what happens. You never know in Hollywood until you cash the check.
Yeah.
So there's that. But but that also led, after Fukushima, 108 days later, everybody's looking at San Francisco. And again, the United States does not play well with others. Therefore, we somehow use technology to push the quake down to Mexico. Mexico warned all of its people beforehand, but the next, then you had another, as this pattern went along, you just had more quakes in Japan, and we're on the next 188-day cycle for this. Is going to be the last, approximately the last week of October.
Okay, fair enough. And there is someone who's asking if you know Ed Dames and the kill shot. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, Ed Dames has been talking. Again, Ed's a nice guy. Everybody's a nice guy. I don't beg on anybody for making predictions. But Ed's been using that same kill shot thing for 30 years.
Yeah, he's been wrong every time.
And so show me where Ed has been right about anything.
Well, I don't know about that, but I can say that, again, we're talking about, are you predicting? Because the kill shot from the sun is also... people, I used this in my talk recently. It looks into James McKenney's website. He talks about how they basically have demonstrated that they can actually shoot an object into the sun, create what is in essence a solar flare that then angled in the right way can actually hit the Earth. And all that comes down to is a kill shot will be orchestrated by the powers that be if they decide that's what they want to do, to create an EMP or whatever else they've got going on. So, or it can be prevented by the same purpose. You've got ETs.
You and I are in disagreement on this because, you believe they want to kill 90% of the people on the planet. And I just say, why do you want to go out and shoot all the people picking cotton for you? It doesn't make any sense to me.
No, I don't think they're going to kill them all. I actually think they're going to kill just some of them. But at any rate, they're always trying to kill some of us.
Okay. Deal. Well, I think they want to make us. They want to make us sick because that obviously makes us easier to control. And again, as I said earlier in this conversation, Kerry, and I've been saying this. I can't even tell you how long I've been saying this before anybody else was saying it. That they're manipulating the sun. This UFO contactee, Audrey, that I was friends with when I was working on Strange Universe back in 95, 96 or so. He's the one that told me that there's something wrong with the sun. Now, he was talking about the Pleiadians fixing it, and he had actual photographs of Pleiadian ships with the sun in the background that he took out the window of other craft while he was flying on the ships. And then he moved away, and then he got all weird, and he moved away to, we tried to sell his story to people on the networks. He would never give us rights, and then he moved away to Germany, and I never heard from him again.
Well, there is evidence that things are happening to the sun, and the light has changed as well from the sun. There's no doubt about it. It's changing.
It's going in the blue range, which is now activating the serotonin levels. Let me also tell you that the reason so many people are now experiencing night sweats and is the modulation of the hippocampus in the brain. And what's happened since 2012? Look, December 21st, 2012 was the between October 28th of 2011 and 2012 was the linchpin in human history. You're just now seeing the manifestations of the amazing spiritual energy that was unleashed at that period of time, with the Venus transits and with the solar alignment of the Pleiades on May 20th of 2012 for the first time in 26,000 years. The veil has been removed from the right-hand side of the brain. We are coming closer and closer and closer to the Mayan world motto of all is one, life has purpose, God is love. So for the first time, you could say that the true power of the feminine has been released. But here's what the evil people do. They put people out there like Hillary Clinton to supposedly manifest what the true spiritual femininity is supposed to be. We now have access to the quantum part of the brain. And what's happening is the hippocampus, which controls the transfer and the flow of information between the bicameral fissure of the right and left-hand sides of the brain, specifically is getting overloaded. We have so much stuff actually coming out of it, and that's another reason why it controls the temperature of the body. That's why a lot of you folks out there who are processing all this new information are sweating like crazy between about 4:35 a.m. and about 6 or 7 a.m. in the morning, because the hippocampus is processing information from the right to the left hand, from the left to the right hand side of the brain. It's amazing.
Okay. There's another, and thank you for that, Sean. There's another person here asking, let's see, a good question. And it just went away. Okay. The last book, are you going to be revealing what happens to Ted Humphries, or is it going to be another 2 books before you reveal where he might have gone?
Okay. Well, I can tell you that he. I don't. There's kind of a fun surprise twist ending. Let's just say that in the next book, it gets even wilder, because it talks about his actual experiences with altering the timelines, with actually moving back and forth between the timelines. And again, the last I heard of him was 2009. And as far as I know, he kind of he moves on about 2010 or so. So there's still about 4 years of this story to be told. But in his life, considering the places that he goes, you see, this is what people don't understand, is that once you jump into the time stream, it's not just time that doesn't fetter you anymore. It's space. You can go anywhere in space by just jumping through these dimensional rifts, if you will. So you want to go to the other side of the universe, you can do that. You want to go to the Andromeda Galaxy,
yes,
you can do that. There is no limitation on where you go. And so that's the amazing part. He doesn't even have to stay on this planet. He does take a side-like visit to visit his friend, Dr. Rufus T. Henry, and who's on kind of an idyllic planet somewhere. So he does do some of this time-space traveling. But again, he's desperately trying to keep what he discovered about the Time Runner secret from people that might be able to use this. Look, Hans Kammler had figured this out. Hans Kammler and Simon Ratterman had figured out how to use the Time Runner and time travel, and they didn't give it to Hitler. I mean, they did not want to give it to anybody else in the Third Reich, because they knew what they would do with it, and they knew the chaos that they could actually create while using it. So that's when book 4. Like I said, read book 3. I should have book 4 out. It won't take as long this time to get book 4 out. And
excellent. Listen, what about people are asking you to give your prediction about the election, because actually, there is someone, I forget who it is, who is saying that there's not going to be, the election is going to fall through and Obama is going to stay in office and this kind of thing. Do you want to weigh in with your view? Camelot has been told certain things. I'm interested what you think.
Well, all I can say is that here's been the challenge. And I don't want to pussy out on this, because I've been right on all the elections up until Romney, because I thought even though the astrology that I cast for Romney showed him happy after the election, of course, I didn't realize that he was happy that he didn't get elected, because he did better under Barack Obama than he would have done under Mitt Romney. I'm serious. He made more money and was more protected, and Obama's done more to protect the big corporations than Romney ever could have. So I'm looking at it thinking, well, the American people couldn't possibly be so stupid as to re-elect Barack Obama. And then I realized, no, all the corporations, he's been protecting the corporations. He's made sure that none of the laws have been enforced, that these guys can get away with murder. I mean, his first act as president was to give them $3.5 trillion of taxpayer money. So look, and I'll give you my philosophy and my opinion. Whenever you have what we call a conservative candidate within 6 points, you've got to basically spot them the ball of anywhere from 6 to I think 8 points or so, because the media are the Democrats. I mean, George Skippy Stephanopoulos, for God's sakes, he was the press secretary for the Clinton White House when he had to tell the most outrageous lies on earth, and now he's doing the same thing except as the anchor of ABC News. So that gives you an idea that the media are the Democrats on the one hand. On the other hand, I'm just so torn about this, because when you're talking about this election, and this is exactly what I was talking about with now the veil being removed off the right-hand side of the brain. We're creating time as we introduce it. The recent predictions, and the reason I stopped doing them, is the predictions have just gone out the window, because now we're in the fifth dimension. Now we're in a space where people are actually creating time as we reach it. So, I mean, in my opinion, I would think that once you get to the debates, and once you get to see, if people can just see what a nightmare Hillary Clinton is. Look, Donald Trump says some stupid stuff, and he said some mean things about people, but we're talking about Hillary Clinton, who, if you know anything from the alternative media whatsoever, the news every day is Hillary Clinton, blah, 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 somebody knew her, blah, 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 mysteriously, blah, 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 is dead. And so now we've just had 5 more people that know stuff about her that die. If you look at the body count around this murderous Lucretia Borgia, if people understood who Hillary Clinton was, we wouldn't be voting for her for president. We'd be hanging her from a tree. So, I mean, I could hope that Donald Trump becomes president of the United States, because I don't think he's controlled. I don't think that he's controlled by the insiders, which is why the Republicans are terrified of him, because he's one of these guys that's very much against the military-industrial complex. I would say that now you have forces, let's just put it this way, you have assassination-type forces moving against both these candidates, because the people on the inside may not want either one of them. When you have Lawrence Sanchez, who was one of the deepest, darkest spy masters of the CIA, and he's the one that the two people, the one person that just killed the British member of Parliament, and the other crazy English guy who came to the Trump rally to supposedly assassinate him, they were both in the same nut house in England. They were both under control. No, they were both.
Absolutely, Manchurian candidates. Yeah, all right,
both under the control of Lawrence Sanchez. And when you have a guy who's a big Hillary Clinton supporter, that used to be head of the CIA and was considered the assassination master of the CIA. I mean, there's some big bad stuff coming up. Now, again, I had thought that Obama's plot had always been to basically take out Hillary Clinton with these various investigations, and have Joe Biden kind of parachute in at the end.
Oh, no.
So he finally gets his legacy and his mini-me kind of candidate to get in there to carry on whatever, knuckleheadness that, Obama thinks is right. But, again, I'm not going to make a prediction. In my opinion, I am saying that the timeline is so in flux, that there are so many things at play, that there's so many things going through this, and I know I don't want to pussy out on it. I mean, in my opinion, I think if Trump is within 6 points, even down as an example, I think that he will win the election, because I simply do not see. And let me give you a Hillary aspect. Even if Hillary wins the election, Hillary's going to be impeached. It's just going to be because all of these things that she's done, and because they haven't even brushed the surface. The emails aren't anything. It's the Clinton Foundation. It's the Clinton Foundation that's the problem. If now there's a guy named Seth Rich who's inside the DNC. The reason he was just murdered is because he found out that when Hillary becomes president, she's going to put all the cabinet positions up to the highest bidder. So, hey, Goldman Sachs, you want to be a commerce secretary? Sure, why not? Hey, Monsanto, you want to be head of the FDA? You want to be head of agriculture? Sure. Well, bidding starts at $1 million. So,
I appreciate all that, and thank you for giving your opinion, Sean.
You're going to disagree with it. Yeah. Okay,
so. It's just, I have to say, no, I agree with some of what you say. No problem. All I'm saying is that it is very interesting, but these people are run. You do know that. They don't operate on their own. They're not isolated. They are very much manipulated and puppets for all intents and purposes, to say nothing of the fact that they're clones.
I thought that was a given, Kerry, that we were just talking about, the empty suits are going to be the puppets, and all we're doing is, we may hate McDonald's, but we're just getting mad at the clown that stands up front of the store.
Well, I mean more or less.
as I said, the guy that's going to be president is Dick Cheney because he's running everything behind the scenes.
Well,
anyway.
that's a better answer. You know what I'm saying?
Great. Okay.
All right. Okay.
So there it is.
So there you go. Okay, very good, Sean.
Wait, let me give one last. Let me give one last thing.
Yes.
For all this time, when there was the 17 candidates and everything else, I have said over and over and over again that Trump was going to be the nominee. I have also said, going back a couple of years ago, that if you look at the let me pawn this off on astrology. If you look at the astrological stellium that's going on right now, it's a repeat of the Weimar Republic in Germany from about 1931 to 1935. You have the same positions of Neptune and Aries and very interesting Uranus return and all that. And I've been saying that whoever's coming out of this is the rise of a new Hitler, an authoritarian character. The problem is, which person is that going to be? I mean, they both have these Hitlerian. I mean, Hillary is completely and utterly ruthless. Donald Trump just says dumb things. Hillary's killed people. So but you have this rise of Hitler. People are looking for an authoritarian character to fix a society that is completely unraveled under the ridiculous leadership of Barack Hussein Obama or Barry Soetoro or Tony D. Tiger or Harrison J. Bonnell or whatever he's calling himself today.
Okay, so one last question, and then we're going to let you go and close this down. Planet X, what is your opinion on Planet X? God, someone in the chat is asking this, so I'm doing this on behalf of them.
With Planet X. Here's the interesting thing. Look, I was debating Mark Hazelwood and with his Planet X book at the UFO World Congress in 2003. Coming from the lady from Zeta Talk, Nancy.
Nancy is her first name. I forget. Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Nancy Felder or whatever it was, who claims she's talking to Zeta articulants and all this other stuff. Look, I've been debating these Planet X people that have no evidence. There's no astronomical evidence. Even Zecharia Sitchin, who was a friend, and Zecharia Sitchin said, even in my interpretations of the Sumerian cuneiforms, we're not talking about Planet X coming around until the 29th century. So let me give you the breakdown on the people that are talking about Planet X and what might be the real thing with Planet X. First off, you have the Billy Meyer case. And in the Billy Meyer contact notes, the Pleiadians tell him that there's a destroyer comet. And a destroyer comet comes through the solar system every now and then and causes chaos. They are the ones that claim that that Venus had its orbit reversed by the destroyer comet. In other words, Venus is the only planet in the solar system that actually rotates clockwise. Of course, typical for a woman to do completely opposite things. And then Uranus was actually tipped on its side, the Pleiadians claim, by the destroyer comet. Now, they claim the destroyer of the comet is not coming through again until 2250 AD. That's the Billy Meyer notes. Okay, next. The Planet X people that have been talking about this since 2003, complete nonsense, total hoax. They got caught by running a photograph of Io with a plume coming off one of the volcanoes, claiming this is Planet X and that's the exhaust pipe. And somebody caught them and said, no, that's Io. And they were like, oops, sorry. So nothing's happened since then. They've been talking about this since 2000. By the way, Planet X was supposed to come in March of 2003. And I was the one that was standing up there going shenanigans and this complete nonsense. However, this is where it gets more interesting. And let me tell you the conspiracy. In the conspiracy, you have Pluto, poor old Pluto. Pluto gets Plutoed as a planet and now becomes a, quote, dwarf planet. So now we only have 8 planets in the solar system. Now, however, the NASA guys are telling us that now they found another planet. I don't know what they're called it yet.
Planet 9.
Okay, Planet 9. But isn't it interesting that they're calling it Planet 9 by making sure that Pluto's not a planet anymore, just so they don't have to call it the 10th planet? Notice? So
actually, let me just put a plug in here and then I'll let you finish, Sean. But I do want to say that Andy Lloyd, who's been studying this for a very long time, did a presentation at my Watford conference. It's for sale for all of $2.99. That's less than the cost of a latte on my Vimeo account. So if you want to hear the explanation for what's going on with Planet 9, and he is also somebody who studied Sitchin, et cetera, and brings some interesting theories to bear on this subject. So go on, Sean, and continue.
No, I think that would be great. Look, I'm no giant expert on this. I'm just saying that the real challenge here is that astronomy is one of the most populous sciences. I mean, you had a 14-year-old kid discover Hyakutake, one of the biggest comets in history. You've got Shoemaker and Levy. You've got Hale and Bopp. You know, these guys weren't professionals. Anybody with a telescope can look up at the sky, and as far as I can see, there hasn't been any physical proof or evidence for a, quote, 10th planet coming towards us. And again, even Sitchin said if it was going to happen, that it wasn't going to happen until like the 29th century. So there you go. That's all I have to say about it. I just think that there's other things to worry about than a planet, than the Chicken Little concept of a planet coming and destroying us. Okay.
Well, thank you very much, Sean. It's great to hear about your book. I think we got people who have been watching this have been getting a bonus because we got you to talk about all your theories and your predictions, and also got you to weigh in on other people's predictions and theories, and very good stuff.
You asked me to look at the people that did the remote viewing and give my opinion.
Well, actually, I want you to look at what I asked you to look at was actually the incident itself. I wanted you to remote view that exact incident. I didn't want you to remote view the people who did the remote viewing, but that's all right. It's all good.
21st is going to be.
Yeah, I hear you. I don't think what you're seeing is what they're seeing. So we you know, more than one thing happens on the planet. So you both could be right or you both could be wrong. So we'll find out.
Saw 3 different events that were completely.
No, they weren't all different. They were very, very similar.
The building was of it.
No, okay. Let's. Okay, everyone, just so you understand, Sean and I know each other for a very long time, and I have one of his cats on top of it. So we go on like this.
You have to get Tally checked, mind you, because I told you his brother just died. So
Tally is fine, and thank you very much. He's right here listening to you, so don't insult him. So
I'm saying he's taking to the vet.
I don't believe in vets, doctors, or any of those people. They're complete charlatans in most cases.
They are.
Okay, so at any rate, my cat's perfectly healthy. Thank you very much. We fight like cats and dogs, but we love each other, and he's a wonderful guy. So
I love you to death.
Thank you so much for coming on the show, Sean. As always, it's a delight and a pleasure, and it's a wild and crazy ride. This is a great book. All the Sands of Time books are great and highly recommended. So again, your website again, give it out, Sean.
Strange Universe Radio, and you can tune into my show on revolutionradio.co or freedomslips.com Monday through Friday from 3 to 5. Monday through Friday from 3 to 5. We are we're the #1 talk show on the internet. It's we've got about 2.5 million people that listen every day. We're I think between 11 and 9th or something out of 10,000 stations on the internet. So it's a lot of fun. We have great participation, and you're all welcome to come in and listen, and thank you so much. And let me just put in a plug for Kerry Cassidy here. That Kerry is so amazing, and she's put this network of people together that really mesh in a world of truth, and she's built up this international reputation. And it was really such an honor touring around Europe with you to see just the honor and awe and respect that she's held it by very, very powerful people around this world. And I kid her saying that she really is the Lois Lane of the internet, because she's the one that's hanging off a building or getting blown up in a helicopter, running from place to place. And how's Neil, by the way? Are you guys still together?
Yes.
Okay.
Everything's fine. Thank you very much for bringing my personal life into this, Sean.
I like it. He's my friend. And
yeah. Well, and how's Melissa? How's the lovely, beautiful Melissa? And let's give her a plug while we're at it.
She's okay. She set up all the stuff that you guys are seeing on the web. So
lovely.
She gets all the props of making all this stuff go, and I can't do any of this stuff without her. So anyway, tell him cheerio, and next time he's in town, we'll go to Disneyland and have some fun.
Absolutely. Okay. Okay. Thank you so much, everyone. Sean, I'm going to hang up on you here and run the credits. So bear with me. And I want to thank everyone for listening. And it's been a lot of fun. And so just bear with me while I figure out how to run the credits here.
All is one. Life has purpose. God is love. See you. Thanks, Kerry.
Okay. Good night.
All right. Nice, sweetheart.